My god. Hi, this is my first video for this channel. I decided to create this channel to like be completely separate from what I normally do, because normally I just do gaming stuff, but I feel like recently I feel comfortable branching out, and so yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I feel like I've lived a very plentiful life. I've got a lot of stories to share, and so this will probably be my first one because I always mention on my stream that yeah, oh, my ex-husband, or when I lived overseas, and people are like, huh? And so this is a great introduction and a great setup to promote my channel too. A long time ago, I know it's really hard to believe, but my dad and we did not have a very good relationship at all. My dad and I absolutely hated each other. And although that is something that's like really hard to believe, it's true. We constantly fought, but not only did we fight, you know, oftentimes we would just go days without speaking to each other. Or I would get mad at him and I would tell him, well, you know, I'm gonna be an adult soon anyways, so it doesn't really matter what you think, I'll just leave. And my dad, of course, you know, I was very freshly 18, so my dad thought I was bluffing, of course. But he was like, well, you won't get anywhere with it, you don't have enough money saved up. But the thing is, I did, and I was gonna travel internationally for a guy that I had really just met, you know, online. But the day of, I remember I had packed my bags and I was leaving. My Uber was right outside. That was the first time I think I had ever seen my dad actually cry. I've never really seen my dad cry, and so to see my dad moved by something that obviously he was scared of, I was like, oh shit, maybe I did mess up, but I did it anyways because I wanted my dad and I's relationship to be better, but I could not stand being around him at that point, so I left. By the way, when I first started staying with my ex-husband, before we were even married, he did not have a job for a very, very long time. And the reason why was because he was taking care of his grandmother, which, I mean, I respect. Money was very tight for us because he was on something called universal credit, and that was about it. But yeah, I guess I'll really get to like the gripes. Living with my ex overseas, I lived in the UK to start with, southeast of London. And at first I felt like it was good, but of course, you know, there's like a honeymoon period in a lot of relationships where your love kind of overpowers anything flaw-wise that goes on with that person. And so later down the line, I noticed it kind of became a little annoying, absolutely, but he had issues when it came to like hygiene. He had issues when it came to actually being clean in general. And so at that point I was like getting annoyed, but I still did it because I was like, maybe he just doesn't understand, or maybe he just does it because, I mean, he's a guy. Like, guys aren't like the most clean people ever. I just believed everything that I'd heard all my life, that, well, guys just tend to be messy. And so I would clean up after him, and I really didn't mind at the time, because like I said, it's a honeymoon period and I really liked him. But I'm sorry, on his side of the bed, I would notice he would leave chip bags, or like, you know, the pint of ice cream like Ben and Jerry's that you would get. It would be empty, but he would leave it behind for some reason. Also notice underneath his desk as well, he was just like very unkept. There would be a lot of socks underneath his desk from when he would wear them to his desk while he'd stream or work. And then he would, I guess, forget they're under there. And then he would repeatedly like wear different socks and then take them off underneath that desk and just leave them. I mean, but also toenail clippings too, which was kind of gross. But I also noticed that anytime there would be something in the hallway, maybe like a piece of trash or something that he had dropped, I guess you could say it was unbeknownst to him, below him, but he would actively walk over it. And at that point, I was thinking to myself, surely he knows what he's doing, right? But I had a talk with him and I was like, hey, you can't keep leaving this stuff around. You know, I see that you walk over it, but you don't acknowledge it and you don't clean it. It's not a good habit to have. But then those habits proceeded to get worse and worse and worse as time went on. It also started getting to the point where he was very wasteful. I noticed that, for example, if he had gotten chicken nuggets or whatever, he'd heat it up, but then he'd use an extra amount of like ketchup on the plate. But for some reason, despite that massive excess being there, he wouldn't eat it all. like at all, not even like half of it. And so he would sit his plate outside of the kitchen sink because our sink was kind of small, and he would just leave it there. He would not rinse it off, he would not wipe it off. It would just be there, and it would get dry and then hard and then gross to clean off. And I told him, you need to rinse your plates off because we can't have bugs around here. But not to mention, it also would make it a lot easier to clean, don't you think? He was like, oh yeah, of course, like I get that, blah, blah, blah. But he would still do it anyways. Even when it came to the bathroom, I noticed that he would have potty underneath the seat. I mean, sure, you can't see it, but it's still gross. It's still a good general habit to have, to clean after yourself, especially if you're occupying the space with somebody else. Absolutely. For me, I'm not gonna say I'm a massive neat freak because there are some things that I do like get dirty myself, but at the same time, not to the extent that he did. And then it would get to the point where I'm yelling at him like, if I was in your position, what would you do, right? What would you do in my position? He just straight up said, oh, well, I don't know. Yeah, like, of course you don't know, because I feel like you know you're doing it, but you just don't care. And that's where the problem lies, I feel like. It even got to the point where I absolutely threatened to break up with him. He was like, oh my God, no, please. Like, I really don't want to break up with you, blah, blah, blah. This is a partnership. Like, we have to do things equally here. You know, both of us have the time to do so. So make sure that we respect each other and make sure that we clean the spaces up that we both occupy. When it got better, I stupidly believed that it was going to continue to get better. And then it just slowly started to decline again. I feel like one of the thick of it things was when I had to research for my visa because I could not stay in the UK just willy-nilly. I could only stay in the UK 6 months out of 12 months. And so I had to keep going back to America over and over again. And not only was it stressful, it's also expensive as well. And so keep in mind, because, you know, I left when I was freshly 18, I can't just, you know, go back to my dad. I feel like my dad and I weren't even really still talking. My dad and I's relationship was still pretty rocky. So I would have to find different places to stay, even if they were kind of shady. But I didn't like that. I didn't like being apart from somebody that at the time I really loved. And so I just decided, well, let's go ahead and go for a visa. Now, the visa process, it should have only taken us about a month or so, but it took way longer than that. And I'd say the research part is probably one of the hardest and longest parts of the visa, I'd say, because even months and months in advance, I didn't really want to hire an immigration advisor because, I mean, I didn't have that kind of money, you know? I just wanted to stay there. But in general, I just also noticed that whenever I was researching for the visa, he would always say, well, can we do it another time? It's just that it's really stressful and I don't really feel like doing it right now because I don't feel like being stressed. And the whole time in my head, I'm thinking like, motherfucker, I'm doing this for like you, like for us, but I can stay here. And you're talking about stressed. How do you think I feel knowing that I'm essentially homeless every single time I visit my home country? I was pretty knowledgeable, but I also saw horror stories where people did not use an immigration advisor. And sadly, a lot of their applications did not go through, but they had also wasted so much money and so much time. And so at that point, I was like, okay, well, maybe I absolutely need an immigration advisor. After deciding that I needed an immigration advisor, we had talked about everything, and he was pretty surprised at how well-versed I was in like a lot of the UK law and the US law pertaining to, you know, marriage and everything else. And so we decided, well, we're gonna go ahead and make sure that with this guy, we can process my application and then hopefully expedite it and then have me home within about a month and a half. But first, for the visa, I needed to make sure that we were actually married. And so we traveled back to my hometown. And funnily enough, I remember telling my dad, hey, this guy's gonna be my husband. This was about maybe 9-ish months or so after being with this guy. And my dad just straight up laughed in my face. At the time, I was like, wow, that's so cruel and so sick. But then I realized, you know, he just hasn't changed. Like, he's still very much so stubborn. I mean, I guess I get it, you know, especially now. Looking back on the whole situation, I get it. I get it. We just got married, did the paperwork for it, and then we had a little bit of like a union and whatnot. It was literally just me and him, but it was official. I got my marriage certificate and everything, and it's so gross, but I cried when I first got married. Like, making this video is bringing it back, but when we were saying our vows and stuff, flash forward, I actually ended up going to Georgia because I could not stay in the UK. 6 months out of 12 months rule, remember? And so at that point, because I couldn't stay, I just started working a job in Georgia and everything. And I don't think I'd ever really been to Georgia before, but I was like, okay, my sister's there. I haven't seen her since I was like a kid, so I might as well try it. But since she had offered, I took it, of course, and I worked at Waffle House in the middle of nowhere. A whole job was just ghetto, I gotta admit. But just so that I could help pay for some of the expenses, while my mother-in-law at the time also helped as well. But when it was finally time for me to go back and start my application in the UK, I realized I did not save as much money as I wanted to, but it was okay. Still got through it. But when we were doing all of the paperwork and stuff and collecting everything, we needed to take pictures of our house, like our living conditions. We needed to take into consideration like our bank accounts, and we had to send them like full proof. We had to send like text messages and call logs and everything else of everything that we did essentially throughout our relationship, just so they could prove like, oh yeah, this is a legitimate relationship. Of course, if you didn't know, while the visa is getting processed, you need to actually be in your home country. And so I went to New York so that I could expedite everything and they could get my biometrics and everything. And it was supposed to take only about a month or so, but the system was deeply flawed. They had just started providing new workers for the immigration applications, and my immigration advisor said he had never seen something like that in his like 30-40 years of working. And keep in mind, he had been in the business for so long that he had never seen something like that. Yeah, the stay was very much so extended, and I had to keep traveling from place to place. And again, I did not have a lot of money. I didn't get the chance to save up as much money as I really wanted to. And not to mention, I had never really been to New York before either. So staying there for what I thought was going to be a month turned out to be about almost 3 months, like 2.5 months. And there were some nights where I barely ate. I remember having in rotation either a grain bar, water, cereal with like a splash of milk, and then that's it. That was literally it. Those are the 3 meals that I had in rotation for a good 2 weeks at least. And I remember I dropped like 11 pounds. Anyways, one of the last parts of that, aside from them processing the application, was me needing to print off all of the paperwork that me and my immigration advisor had compiled when I was staying in the UK. That was about 500 pages of work that we had done that needed to be printed off. And so I'm staying at Airbnbs and I'm thinking to myself, well, where the hell am I gonna get that from? And so I remember going to a store to print. I actually don't really remember where it was. I think it could have been like an Office Max, Office Depot, Staples, UPS store, whatever. I just knew that they had printers, and so I took a trip over there to make sure that I printed off all of the paperwork. And their machines were breaking, and when I saw how much they were charging for a singular piece of paper to get printed, I think they were pricing it anywhere between like 5 to 10 cents or whatever per page. And so because none of the machines were working, then I was also looking at the price, something I was like really not keen on paying because again, I'm already struggling. I called my ex and I was like, hey, can you help me remote print something? Like go online and then select the destination and then, you know, print it off, all of the files. And he was not helping me like at all. And when I tell you I was so tired and I was so stressed, I consistently sat there and was like walking him through the steps, but he just didn't do it. Like he was just, oh my God, he was just so incompetent to the point where I didn't know what to do. My immigration appointment was about 30 minutes away as well. And just when I had really given up hope, there was a lady that was also printing there. And I asked her for help just as she was getting ready to walk out the door. And I was like, excuse me, miss, please, I need help. And I explained my situation. I said, hey, my immigration appointment is 30 minutes away. I have like 500 pages to print and the machines aren't working and I'm really stressed. My husband's not helping me right now. And the first thing that she says to me, she literally grabs my shoulder. She was so sweet, like literally an angel. And she grabs my shoulders and she goes, honey, it's okay. Okay. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna work through this. She even puts her stuff down and just starts helping me bit by bit. And all the pages were printed off. And she said, whatever the cost is, I'll pay it. I don't care. And I was like, but it's like 500 pages, please. She was like, I don't care. I'm here to help. Literally an angel. But she said that she was on her way somewhere. And so she ended up walking out. But all of my pages printed and I still had 5 minutes left. The immigration place was around the corner or whatever. So I wasn't gonna take too long, but I made it about a minute late. But if it were not for that lady that day, I don't think I would have made my immigration appointment. I would have like borderline starved for nothing. And yeah, no. There was just a lot going on. I finally got what I wanted. My visa was finally processed around December 3rd or so of 2019. And that was when I got the news at my Airbnb. And I was so ecstatic. I took myself for a little treat. And I ate McDonald's in the middle of Times Square, which is now closed down, by the way, which is kind of wild to think about. But I was so happy. I was over the moon. And I was able to have my passport shipped to me. And I was so happy. I finally start my new chapter and everything should be smooth. Now, I had a few days before I had flown out. I think my flight was for like December 6th, December 7th. And so I just spent time applying for jobs. And funnily enough, I ended up getting an offer nearly immediately. And I told him, hey, I'll be back in to the UK towards this amount of time. I just got approval to work, etc. And I was really excited to start a new job. So I had that in the works for me. I did my interview, nailed it, and then I started working. And of course, you know, COVID happened. And so around March 2020, everything was shut down. Like everything was shut down and I was put out of my job. I know I wasn't really working that long, but I was put out of my job. And unlike you guys in the US, in the UK, we ended up having not stimulus checks, but instead our monthly wage that we would get paid at our job was kind of averaged over, I believe it was like 6 to 12 months. And then that average was paid out to you monthly as if you were still working, which was really nice. And so I just took the time to kind of think about, okay, well, how am I going to earn back that money and what can I do to pass the time? And because nobody could go outside and nobody could work, I was just like, damn, I mean, I guess I'll start streaming. So I kind of picked up streaming along the way there. But I also tried to play it a lot smarter. And I know that we couldn't just go out and grab food because some restaurants were still operating and whatnot, but eating out is expensive. So I would do like monthly grocery shopping hauls and whatnot. And I would create an entire list of really big meals that, you know, I could have with my ex-husband and eat for days at a time. It's actually wild to me just how packed the lines for the store were, because I didn't think that COVID was going to be that serious. But when I tell you, we would go to like a big Tesco's, like think of it like a Walmart, right? But the line would go all the way out to the parking lot, to the drive that you would initially go into to go towards the parking lot. Like that's how massive the line was. And so of course, going grocery shopping was something that you could not do very often. So that's the reason why I did monthly shopping hauls. But it was also in the middle of, you know, towards spring and summer. And so it was hot outside, you know, so March, April, June, July, August, some really hot months. I would stand out there for 2 hours just to try to ensure that I could eat, my husband could eat, and we would save money. But when we got up to the door, they told us, oh, only one person per household can come in. Like, they took those COVID restrictions seriously. And I did my shopping and whatnot. The shelves are also just like very, very bare though. So I worked with what I had. But despite all of that trouble, I would cook and I would literally start my stream, but have something on in the background, maybe like a pot of beans or something, or maybe slow roasting something, stuff of that nature. But I remember very vividly my ex-husband being like, well, can we order something out? I don't really feel like eating leftovers. I'm not really into that, you know? And I'm like, oh my God. See, around this time, he had stopped taking care of his grandma. And so it was very easy for him to also, you know, I guess try streaming or do something to like get money on the side and whatnot. And so because it's coming from my pay, I was like, we don't really have the option. Like, we can't afford to eat out, especially for him because he ate very large portions. He was a bigger man. But I told him, we can't afford to eat out every day. And I don't care if you don't want leftovers or not. Like, this is what we need to do to survive because the government has literally shut down and we cannot do anything. Like, we can't go out as often. We absolutely cannot. And then I need to make back all that money that I had spent processing the visa. But he said, I don't want to do something just ordinary. I really want to work in like tech support, or like I really want to work with like tech or something like phones or whatever. And I was like, bitch, we don't have a choice. Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, we need that money. Like, we need money bad. What? You don't get the option to be picky right now. Like, I was like, where is this entitlement coming from? Like, no, we don't have the choice to pick. Even then, like I said, the hygiene situation and the cleaning situation from beforehand, it just got progressively worse. Like I said, I thought that it would get better, but it just got progressively just worse and worse. And I would literally sit there and I'd be yelling at him like, you need to do this and you need to do that. And even at one point I threatened to like break things off with him, and he would be crying like, oh my God, don't do it, this and that, and like, oh my God, I'll get better. But then he would always revert back to his old ways, and I was stupid enough to believe it. And I wasn't really the type to really vent to my friends, but I started venting to my friends and they were like, girl, what? Leave him. And I was like, oh. See, I wish I would have talked to them a little bit beforehand because I did not expect that response. Literally, I did not. And so because I didn't expect that response, I really started thinking about it. I was like, damn, is it too late? Like, I've already made my bed. I should lay in it. Maybe I can try to force it to work. Don't do that. Girls, don't do that. But I feel like the straw that broke the camel's back was when the world did open up again. This bum still didn't have a job. I was put back into work, and the model that we had was the eat out to help out scheme for the UK. And so different restaurants were giving bonuses for eating out to like stimulate the economy after such a stagnant time period. So we wouldn't do like the normal fancy setup for the tables. It was kind of like you get as many people in and as many people out as possible. And for some reason, my managers hated me because they would overload me with like a 6-top, 4-top, 2-top, you know, and then various 2-tops, and then just load me up with tables over and over again. And some tables are good, but when I'm essentially working a whole floor or half of a floor by myself, no. But I worked so hard that my toes literally bled. It wasn't my shoes because I had worn those shoes beforehand. It was just the sheer amount of like running up and down the steps and how often I was on my feet that my toes were bleeding. But I still worked. I also still continued streaming even though the economy opened back up, because I kind of created like a little bit of an audience. So I was like, you know, I kind of want to continue this and see where it goes. But I had to micromanage that, but also cooking at home too as well. Like, I would still cook at home just so that I wouldn't have to waste money on ordering food out. But there was one day that, you know what? He actually did get a job. And I was thinking to myself, man, it's Monday, my only day off. And so for like one of his first few days or whatever at work, he made himself some sort of like lunch, but he dirtied the fuck up out of the kitchen and made me so mad. My only day off, and I don't even get to go downstairs to a clean kitchen that I can make myself something. I just hate the sight of looking at a dirty fucking kitchen. And so, you know what I did? I ordered myself food. I was like, you know what? I deserve a little treat. So I did. I ordered myself food and I pigged out. But in the meantime, when I tell you I went in that kitchen and fucked it up all the way, chocolate syrup. I took out the ketchup, the mustard, sugar, salt, whatever I could find, hot cocoa powder. And I like put it all over the kitchen like I was just fucking the kitchen up over and over again, like smearing it all over the counters, all over like the fucking cabinets, just everywhere that I could put it. Because I was like, how dare you, after all I do, decide to ruin what I need on my one day off. And then I texted him, you know, I went downstairs and you didn't even have the audacity to fucking clean. So because of that, don't talk to me when you get home. Don't even look at me. Find your own food and clean that mess up, and don't talk to me for the rest of the night. Just don't. Don't even try. I mean, hey, he cleaned it all up. But I said, you're gonna feel how I felt all those times. Anyways, I ended up, again, breaking things off with him. I was dumb at this point because I was like, damn, this is not working. But I was serious this time. And so I was like, okay, we're officially done. We are officially done. And so I broke things off with him again. And this time I meant it. Like, I didn't want to sleep in the same bed as him. Didn't really talk throughout the day. No affection, no cuddles, no sex, no nothing. Okay, because I was telling myself, we got to be serious this time. Definitely got to be serious this time. But he noticed that I started venting to my friends, and he got really, really mad at me for it. This is gonna sound crazy. My ex used to spy on me. And how did I find out about this? Because I remember one day he had left for work, and I was talking with one of my friends in our bedroom at the time. And I was like, you know, I just don't know what to do anymore. And they were like, again, Lily, you really got to break up with him. But I was like, but I really like him. I don't know. Maybe I didn't like him. I liked his company. And he came home and he questioned me about that conversation that I had. Why were you talking with so-and-so about this? And I was like, how did you know that? You weren't even home. And he was like, oh, I forgot my lunch. And so I had come back in. I didn't hear him come in. I looked at his PC and I was like, not on. Lights aren't on. Monitor's not on. What's going on here? But I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess. Maybe what he said was true and I'm just being paranoid. I started to get really paranoid. Both of us started getting paranoid. I'm getting paranoid that he's spying on me. And he's getting paranoid that, like, I'm trying to cheat on him or some shit. Blah, blah, blah. And no, I wasn't. Maybe I should have, though. But either way, that situation happened again. And then I realized, and it kind of clicked in my head, he used to leave his PC on. That way, he could remotely, like, log in for 5M servers. And at the time, I didn't really even understand what the fuck 5M was. I was like, oh, it's got to be that then. Because I even sat at the top of the steps one day when I did have those conversations. He did not come back in. Did not. So at that point, I asked him, are you spying on me? And he was like, what? No, blah, blah, blah. Like, of course he's going to deny it. Of course he is. But I remember, you know, the situation just got more and more dark. The more that I would vent to my friends, the more that he was spying on me and everything else. And I felt like a stranger in my own home. We had done a lot in that house together. I paid for a lot of the materials and everything, and we would rip the wallpaper off together. Like, we'd sand together, we'd paint stuff together. Just, you know, it felt like there was a lot of history in that home, but I felt like a stranger in my own home. That felt mortifying. And I just feel like towards the end of a relationship, you kind of understand who a person is, you know? You understand who they are and what they are actually like, which is the more scary thing, I'd say. But I remember one night, very vaguely, he said he was gonna go for a walk while I was with my friends. And I'm sorry, this is like a random tangent, but I have to say, I remember because he was very petty and very upset at me for deciding to like break things off until he quote unquote got better. I remember he would just give me this disgusting stare, like this death stare, whenever he would get home from work. But not to mention, I remember very vividly when I would stream, I mean, his streams weren't doing that great. I do remember once upon a time, he did stream quite a bit, but I don't think he really got anywhere with it. Like, he didn't get partner. He would say things like, oh, it must be nice to sit on your ass and live your dream, when in actuality, I just networked better. I knew how to entertain an audience. I mean, that just is what it is. But he also told me like I ruined his fucking life. Everybody thinks I'm such a bad person and stuff like that. Started getting really demented to me towards the end of our relationship, which was, whoa, okay. Because I remember I even tried like helping him, like, you know, set a schedule. I tried being as helpful as I could, you know, cooking you dinner, helping you get a good schedule, making sure you were on top of stuff. Also, sometimes he would sit there and while I was streaming or while I was playing with my friends, he would sit there and like practice his guitar, something he never did before. I thought this was really weird. He'd never practiced it in his free time, but only when he saw me doing better, or I guess as an attempt to annoy me, he'd just start playing guitar at random times, and my friends would hear it in the background. And two of my friends, Diaz and Ray, would sit there and be like, boo, boo, and like, oh, you fucking suck. Like, turn that shit off. Damn, your ass. You're trash, kid. And he would actually hear that because my headset had like audio leak or whatever. And he was like, your friend's talking about me. Friend's talking about me. You need to tell them to stop. And I was like, oh, what? No, I mean, you're hearing stuff, but in actuality, hell yeah, they were. Stop that shit. I tried my best to be a very helpful person, but I was also very organized as well. And despite that, girl, I guess he just didn't appreciate it. But anyways, he ended up saying that he was gonna do his little night walk or whatever. And so I was like, I mean, sure, whatever, I guess. But in my Discord, I was like venting to my friends because like, oh, finally he's not home again, so I can like get this extra detail out, because it was something that was nagging me at the time. And so I was like, I'll tell my friends this right now. And I remember one person that never really talked in the VC, but they typed in text channel and they said, oh, who are we talking shit about? And they said, oh, is it so and so? And that's when he actually joined the VC and said, oh, fuck you guys are always talking shit about me. I fucking knew it. I knew it. You're always talking about me. You think I'm a bad person because of everything that she says, and you don't understand the full picture and whatnot. I swear to God, if I catch any of you talking shit. And like, keep in mind, that person was just joking. They didn't even know whether or not I was actually talking about him at the time, because they weren't even aware of the situation. They were not aware of the situation at all. My goodness. And then because I know he's out on his night walk, I know that he's coming back in, but he sounded so violent over the Discord call to the point where I went downstairs and I mean, yeah, I locked the door, because if you're being belligerent, you're being belligerent. But I remember I texted his mom and I was like, hey, your son's being really belligerent right now and I'm kind of scared for my own safety. Text her on WhatsApp. She saw the message and she just like left me on red. I was like, I just said that I'm fearing my safety because of your son. And it wasn't until he had messaged me and was like, do I need to get the police involved? Keep in mind, this is 2021, and literally just last year, we were talking about how bad police brutality was for Black people. And so the fact that he said that to me, wow, okay. Very interesting, very cool. But called his mom too, like, oh, I need you to let me in and whatnot. And she's locked me out. And then she came over, she let him in, and then she came up and she said, the best thing that you need to do at this point is you just need to leave. Clear here that your relationship is just not reconcilable. You just need to leave. That's my advice to you. Take a look at everything that he's done. Like, your son has been spying on me. And she was like, oh, Johnny, is that true? And he was like, only once. And I was like, oh my God, you did it at all. Never mind the fact that you did it multiple times. The fact that you did it at all. She was like, oh, don't do that again, Johnny. I was like, oh my God, that's not gonna be next time. Crazy bitch. Oh my God, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. You're both really weird. And then it was like, oh, but she also talks shit about you as well. You mean the times that like she's very racist? Like, she used to just drop the N-word very, very casually. And she would also fetishize us quite a bit. And it was to the point where she would be like, oh, I can't wait for you guys to have kids. And they're gonna be not too light, not too dark. They're not gonna have his nose, they're gonna have your button nose. And the hair won't be too curly, too straight, just right. So I mean, by all means, if that's what you consider talking shit, sure. But at the time when I had problems with it, you defended me, you know? But you also told her not to say those things in front of me. But I digress. That whole situation really changed my perception of how I view people, especially in relationships, because I feel like you really don't know somebody until you guys are like at a stressful point or to the point where you're nearly breaking up. I think the part that hurts me the most is that weaponized incompetence is something that plenty of women deal with on the daily. And if they've been in multiple relationships, they don't recognize it enough. A lot of guys will claim, oh, well, I don't know how to do this. No, they know how to do it. They just want you to do it. They want you to be their mommy. That's the problem. And I didn't realize, because I was so blinded by the fact that I think it could have been anybody. You know, as long as it got me away from my dad, I think it could have been anybody. At the end of it all, I called my dad and I said, Daddy, I really need help. My dad, he paid for a ticket and I'd come back after 3 years of that. And the entire time that was going on, because the relationship was quite abusive and like mentally and verbally abused me quite a bit, I actually ended up struggling with suicidal tendencies, and I felt like I couldn't go anywhere and I couldn't run anywhere because, I mean, I was living overseas and the only thing that I could tell myself was, well, you've made your bed, lay in it. I just kept up my appearance on stream, at work, and everything else, where everybody thought that I was happy. Everybody thought that it was going great, and nobody knew anything until I told them. And the one thing that hurt me more than anything in our entire relationship was that I was actually with him when my grandmother died. I was able to attend her funeral and everything, but I wasn't there for her in her final moments back in Kansas City, where I should have been, I feel like. But I wanted to run away from my problems and my relationship with my dad. And he told me, I only did it because I knew you loved me enough to stay. That is weaponized incompetence, ladies. Do not let a man do that to you. Either way, I feel like I'm way better without my ex. Like, I'm fine, I'm popping, I'm paid. I've got a great relationship with my dad after spending so much time apart. And I feel like everything that I want to do, I'm doing for myself. I'm not living in another person's shadow. I'm not worried about a man. Okay. I'm not worried about that. And recently, I just exited therapy after an entire year of being there. So, go me. But this will not be the last story that I have to tell. And thank you guys so much for being here. And let this be a lesson. You deserve better because you deserve better. Not for nobody else. Don't live for nobody else. Don't do that. Take care of ourselves around here.